Hello and welcome to this webinar, Avoiding Bankruptcy, How Your Business Can Survive the COVID-19 Crisis. I'm Chad Van Horn, and this is the fifth webinar offered by the NSU Division of Advancement and Community Relations as a resource to alumni, supporters, and community members. This video is being live streamed to Facebook Live and will be available as a resource online through the NSU Alumni Association. I'll start with a quick presentation and have Q&A session after. Please feel free to type in any questions throughout this webinar, and I'll make sure everyone is answered toward the end. All right, let's get started. Quick agenda. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of why you should listen to me and give you a little background about me. That'll go very quickly. Then we're going to talk about what I think is the most important part of the presentation, increasing your cash flow. For businesses, for small businesses, cash flow is the most important. It's the number one reason businesses go into bankruptcy, so we'll go through that. If we have time, we'll go through some different options if you're struggling and you can't increase your cash flow enough. And then as promised, we'll do a Q&A at the end. So why should you listen to me? I'm a certified expert in business reorganization. That means I've represented many businesses in and outside of bankruptcy, and I've taken a lot of exams. I'm one of the top business bankruptcy filers in the state. I see what makes businesses go into bankruptcy, why they fail, and what keeps them out. I'm a small business owner. I own Van Horn Law Group. We've been around for about 10 years. We were named one of Inc.'s 5,000 fastest growing companies in the United States. And most importantly, I'm an NSU law graduate, so go Sharks. I know that there's a lot of my NSU people on right now. So, all right, so let's talk about how we're going to increase cash flow. It's easier said than done, especially when all of your clients' customers are probably quarantined in their house watching Netflix. So unless you own Netflix, which you wouldn't be on this right now, you're probably wondering how are we going to increase cash flow. So let's go through some things. So government loans and grants are going to be your number one way to increase cash flow, increase bringing cash into the bank. I'm going to spend most of the time on the Paycheck Protection Program, which most of you have heard of, the PPP. So just on Tuesday, the Senate passed a $484 billion stimulus bill with a B that included $370 billion for small businesses. Now, this program is fantastic. The PPP program is fantastic for small businesses if you can get access to it. Now, the first time around, I'm sure you all saw the headlines that large small businesses, Shake Shack, I believe there was a steakhouse, Ruth Chris Steakhouse, took millions out of this. But if you are able to get with a bank, this can give you 2.5 times your monthly payroll from 2019. So the way the math works is you had to be in business in 2019, and you have to figure out what your average monthly payroll was for 2019, multiply that by 2.5 times, that is your loan amount. Now, this loan can actually turn into a grant. Grant meaning free money. To qualify for that, you have to use 75% of the loan amount towards payroll within the 8-week period after you receive the loan. The other 25% can be used for utilities, can be used for rent, obviously can be used for payroll as well, or mortgages. It's very important that you do this right. It does not include 1099 workers, so these are W-2 employees only, and it doesn't include people that make over $100,000 a year. And you're also going to have to certify that you were impacted by your business was impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, which pretty much all of our businesses were. I know mine certainly was. So to file a PPP loan, it's really important that you're organized. So you want to have all the documentation, and there's a list if you go to sba.gov of exactly what you need. Generally speaking, you're going to need all your business information, your 940, 941s for last year, which are tax documents. So you might need to get with your accountant or your payroll company. You're going to need payroll reports. I use Gusto, and they actually have a special place that you go to just to get PPP loan information. And from what I understand, they're now processing applications. You have to prove that your business is active and in good standing. And then you want some documentation on how the pandemic has negatively impacted your business. whether you show loss of sales or loss of money coming into your bank account. I do have some good news. It is possible to get this loan. It is possible to get the grant. How do I know? My law firm actually got it. We were one of the first businesses in Florida to get it. I applied with PNC Bank. We were very aggressive. My team had all the documents ready day one. We actually applied before they opened up their portal. Then we applied again when their portal opened up to streamline things. We had everything organized. We made sure all the numbers were right. About a week later, I got a call from a bank representative, and they wired the money the same day, which was incredible. And what we've done, and I want to give you practical tips because we're all learning on the fly here right now because these are all new programs. So what we've done is we actually opened up a separate bank account so that the funds go into that account, and we only use the allowable expenses to come out of that account. So that's where our payroll is running through, that's where our rent's running through. And that way at the end, when we have to go through the audit, because these loans are going to be audited with your lender, which my lender is PNC Bank, they're going to see if we used it for allowable expenses, if more than 75% was used for payroll. If so, then it's forgiven. We don't have to pay it back. If not, then it's a 1% interest loan that we would have to pay back. So it's really important that throughout this process, one, you're very aggressive, because I think this money is going to run out as well, just like the first time. So you need to get out there. You need to stay on top of your banker. I know that there's other lenders that are working now, like PayPal. I talked about Gusto. PNC, Wells Fargo. The large banks are still doing it. There's actually litigation that has come from that because they're concentrating on the larger loans. I'm not going to get into that. But whoever you're with, make sure you're following up. You really want to be that business that gets this money so that it could help your business succeed. So if you have any questions on the Paycheck Protection Program, please make sure you enter them. I want to make sure I answer all your questions at the end. I'm going to move on to Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Now, this was the easiest application that I've ever done. If you go to SBA.gov, there's a banner up top. It says COVID-19 relief. You click on that. You click on Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, EIDL, and you fill out some basic information about your business. They also ask you, do you want $10,000 in immediate money to help your business? If you click yes, they ask you for your bank account information. And it took me about 5 to 10 minutes to fill out this application. The $10,000 is based on number of employees that you have. So you get $1,000 per employee that you have, and that is forgivable if you do not receive the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. If you do, that becomes a loan. So I'm telling all my clients, apply for that $10,000 if you've been negatively impacted. Worst case scenario becomes a low interest loan, and it gets you money that you might need to make rent, to make payroll, and it could really help you out. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, generally speaking, is only a loan other than that $10,000, and it can be used for payroll costs, employee benefits, mortgages, rents, leases, other bills. So it's a little wider than the Paycheck Protection Program. Also, you can borrow up to $2 million, and that payment can be over 30 years. So it's going to be based on your revenue, and it's a longer process. I'm estimating that it's going to take about 6 to 8 weeks at the least to get this processed. You do get the $10,000 much sooner, though. We actually received that as well. And the way that you'll know that that's coming is if you monitor your personal credit. They're actually going to pull your personal credit, and then usually the money is in your account the next day, if not the same day. As I was saying, you can take up to $2 million. The term can be up to 30 years. If you're a for-profit business, the interest rate is 3.75%. If you're a nonprofit, it's 2.75%. So still much better interest rates than you're going to get if you just go to your local bank for a normal loan. Also, if the loan's less than $200,000, they're not requiring a personal guarantee, which SBA usually requires a personal guarantee. So I'm telling my clients, apply for both. If your business bounces back quickly and doesn't need the money, then give it back, and that's fine. but most businesses are qualified for this loan. If you're wondering if your business qualifies, just ask me the question and I'll let you know. There are certain restrictions. If you're operating gambling or strip clubs or different things, you don't qualify. But most businesses that have less than 500 employees do qualify. So you should definitely apply for that as well. Next on the list, local grants, loans. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of different cities, counties, whatnot, coming up with smaller grants and loans, and normally they're specialized. The biggest one that I saw was for restaurants, because a lot of the restaurants don't really fall under the Paycheck Protection Program. It's not helping them that much because their employees receive a much lower hourly rate than a regular employee because of the tips. So make sure you go to your local city, local county, local state website to see if there's anything there. Also, last but not least, if you're really desperate and you have a business that you think it's appropriate for, I've seen some businesses start a GoFundMe. I don't think it's appropriate for all business, but if you've been around for a long time and you have a loyal following, you never know. People are very generous that I've seen, if they can be, during these times. So if it's the difference between saving your business or going out of business, I really think you should try everything. So let's move on to the next slide. So if you can't get that money or the money's not enough, what else can we do? So we're going to figure out ways to delay our debt payments to our creditors. So the first and usually largest is your mortgage or your monthly rent. So reach out to your mortgage company, reach out to your landlord, see if you can maybe put months on the end, take a couple months off, maybe renegotiate a lease where you're going to extend your lease, but we need a lower rent over the next couple months. Also do that with utilities, do that with credit cards. I know personally American Express reached out to me, and I think it was really them trying to protect their business interest, and they were trying to find out how the COVID-19 affected my business, whether I'd be able to make payments or whether I'd need to work something out with them. So be proactive. The worst thing you can do across the board is just freeze and do nothing. You really got to work through this. I know I went through a point where I was frozen because I've never been through anything like this. So just you got to get through that to save your business for you and your employees. It's really, really important that you get on this. Also, it's a good time. What I did was I just went through all of my expenses, and I saw what I needed and what I didn't. We all have those magazine subscriptions or online subscriptions that just get renewed every month or every year. This is a time to make sure you're cutting those out because they certainly add up. So just really look at everything that you're paying out and see what you can delay. On the opposite side of that, you want to expedite your accounts receivable. Now, you want to be really, really careful with this because you don't want to be that jerk that is on Help Me Howard because you're suing all of your customers because they're falling behind on payments because of COVID-19. But to give you an example of what some businesses that I work with are doing is they're reaching out to certain clients and offering them a discount if they pay the balance in 10 days instead of 30 days. Or if they have a large balance that's a payment plan over a year, they're offering them a larger discount if they get the lump sum worth of money. I know a couple restaurants, and I'll give you an idea of that on the next slide, that are offering discounts on gift cards. So if you buy $100 worth of gift card, it only costs you $80. So that way you're getting money in the door. You don't want to do it too much because eventually those people are going to come in with the gift cards, and you're going to have to deliver on that. So you don't want to kill your cash flow in the future, but that's just a way that you can potentially increase cash flow and get some more money in the door to cover bills right now. So moving on, here's a couple ideas that I found interesting of new revenue streams. So the first one is a local restaurant club that has members. Obviously, they can't have members in right now, so they did a take and bake dinner. And as you can see, they're doing soy ginger glazed grilled skirt steak. And they're trying to they're trying to keep their employees busy and provide a value to their members while keeping that cash flow available to them. The second one, that's actually my barber, Greg. He's a super nice guy. He came up with a brilliant idea of doing a virtual cut where he shows you how to cut your hair or trim your beard. For those of you that can see me, I tried to do it, and I'm pretty awful at it, so I really can't wait until he opens back up. Another bar, Axe Throwing Lounge, actually is doing curbside cocktails and shots, and they're selling you big mason jars of their signature drinks. And I actually got to finish my book that's been pending for a year, so maybe you can finish those special projects that you've been putting off for a little while, like I did with my book. I found myself with a little more time, and luckily I got that finished. So these might not apply to your businesses. We have many different business owners on right now, but just be creative. People are forgiving right now. If you're giving it your best shot, you're trying hard to do things. It's unlikely that people are going to make fun of you for doing something unless you're doing something completely outrageous. But so just maybe use your staff to come up with new ideas. Maybe they have some ideas. Next step, this is a personal pet peeve of mine, is when businesses use factoring or AR purchasing companies. I can go on for this for hours. I only have a couple more minutes, so I'm not going to do it. But these factoring companies and these account receivable purchasing companies, they really are the death knell for your company. They're going to take a large percentage. They're going to give you money up front. It's going to feel good, I get that, but it's going to kill you on the back end. This is the number one reason businesses that I represent end up in bankruptcy. So if you can do anything to avoid this, please, please, please just avoid it altogether. Don't get in with these guys. They make it seem really easy. It's good to get the money in, but long term, it's not going to be successful for your business. So what are the options if you can't increase your cash flow, the creditors aren't working with you, or you just can't get to where you need to get with revenue and it doesn't come soon enough? So really there's three options when it comes to working with creditors. The first option would be bankruptcy. Normally when we talk about businesses, we talk about bankruptcy, which is Chapter 11. That's the reorganization chapter. It's really good at reorganizing debt and working out payment plans. You can even reduce to pennies on the dollar what you owe your creditors. It's very good at dealing with secured debt. So if you own buildings, if you own mortgages, have mortgages. I represent a tow truck company that has 100 tow trucks that have loans. We're good at reorganizing those loans to make sure that, once again, we get to positive cash flow. Separately, you can do debt settlement, which is reaching out to the creditors and negotiating directly with them. Usually debt settlement works if you only have a few creditors, a few larger creditors that you can work with. During these times, I feel like the credit card companies and the creditors out there are going to work with the businesses as much as they can, but if you just can't make it work, then you might have to go to the last one, which is closing the business. Make sure you know where you have personal guarantees versus not having personal guarantees. That's very important, because obviously if there's a personal guarantee, then your personal assets come into play. So that's really it for my presentation. I know that there's some questions that came in, so I certainly want to answer those questions that you have. If you have any other questions, please feel free to go to the Q&A window or email me directly at chad@cvhlawgroup.com. So let's see if I know how to work this. Okay. What's the worst that can happen if I don't pay my creditors? So it really depends on what the creditor is. If the creditor is your landlord, they can evict you. So you want to make a deal with your landlord. If it's an unsecured creditor, the worst thing they can do is file a lawsuit against you. So that's not always terrible. Next question. What's the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 11 bankruptcy? So when it comes to business bankruptcy, the majority of bankruptcies that you're going to hear about are Chapter 11. So those are the reorganization. I believe that's what Neiman Marcus is doing. That's what Ford did, GM did at one point. That allows you to reorganize the debt in a way that keeps you in business and come out the other side with a plan. Chapter 7 is usually for a liquidation. It's where you have assets, the business has assets, but It needs to close down because it can't generate revenue. You put it in Chapter 7, a trustee is assigned to liquidate all the assets and give the money to the creditors. So generally speaking, you won't put a business into Chapter 7. There's a state equivalent called an assignment for benefit of creditors that's generally speaking more efficient, but you really need to talk to a pro about your exact situation. What if you had to temporarily lay off more than half of your employees so they can apply for unemployment? Would that affect the grant money for the PPP? That's actually a fantastic question. I just read an article in the state of Washington. A business owner announced to the employees that they got the PPP, and the employees were upset because what they would have got through unemployment was more than what they would have been paid through the PPP program if they stayed on full time. So the answer to that is yes, this would affect whether it becomes a loan or a grant, because you have to bring the employees back within that 8-week period and use 75% or more of that money on your payroll. If you don't do it, then it becomes a loan. So you have to speak to, and there's a 25% wiggle room there that you can work with the employees to see if some people may want to have a better deal on unemployment than working. But that is important to know that you can bring them back within that 8-week period, and that'll count towards your PPP. Will the stimulus money be taxed as income in 2020? So I believe that that's addressing the $1,200 stimulus that's coming to you individually. I believe that is not being taxed, but that's a good question for an accountant. With the business money, it certainly will go towards your revenue. So at the end of the year, you could be taxed on the profits. Are COVID-19 business losses covered by insurance? Another great question. That's actually being litigated in every state right now, and that's going to be decided by the Supreme Court in a long way from now. So the insurance companies are taking the stand right now that no, it is not covered, and they're denying all the claims, and that's why the lawsuits are coming. So if you do have business interruption insurance, you should run that by an attorney that deals with insurance claims. There are many attorneys out there that are advertising. I'm not one of them, so definitely don't send it to me. If you send it to me, I'm going to give you somebody else's information. They can follow up and look through your policy. But if you do have that business insurance, make sure you at least put a claim in or have an attorney do it on your behalf. I just want to say thank you. You're very welcome, Jennifer. That was nice of you. What's the interest rate of the PPP loan? Great question. It's actually 1%. It was supposed to be 0.5%, but the banks bumped it up to 1%. So once again, super low interest rate, 1% loan there. Let's see the last one. Is consultation, especially for student loans, a good idea? So I heard that it's better paying off high interest loans and working your way down. So with regards to businesses, and this is just a general question with regards to debt. There's people call it the avalanche approach versus a snowball approach. If your business or individually have debt, do you want to attack the high interest rates first? Do you want to get the lowest balance first? Me personally, I like to go after the highest interest rates because that's going to give you the net positive at the end. But there have been studies that have been done that mentally it works better if you pay something off versus you're paying something down. So you want to pay those smaller balances because then it's a win for you. So mentally you'll see people become more successful at paying it off because they say, okay, I paid one off, now I want to pay a second, now I want to pay a third. That's the snowball effect. The avalanche effect is when you pay off the higher interest rates, which generally speaking, if you stick with it, will save you more money, but you just got to decide which one will work better for you. So I think I answered, oh, no, there's another question. I was notified by my student loan provider that I don't have to make payments until September. Should I still make payments? Can't that hurt me in the long run? So it really depends on what program you're on. These payments still qualify for the loan forgiveness. So if you're in an income-based repayment program, you should stay in that. Make sure you document everything because we get into these programs, and this goes for every program. Document everything that you're doing because there are a lot of things that are promised that change later. So you want to be really careful when you're doing the PPP. Make sure you have all your expenses documented so that they can't say, oh, you forgot to give us that document, so now this is a loan for X amount of dollars instead of it being forgiven. Same thing with the student loans. You want to definitely do that as well. All right, so man, we got a lot of questions. This is good. All right, so now I got to figure out where the chat is. I'm sorry. Okay. This is my first webinar. I hope you guys enjoyed it. There haven't really been any hiccups yet. But if I could find the chat, now, oh, there's the chat. Found it. What can you expect with debt settlement negotiation? What concessions can they give for a personal Chapter 7? Can I keep some cash, or do I have to be broke? All right, so when you're talking about debt settlement, it's really dependent on your exact circumstance or situation. So I tell all my clients to see, what does a Chapter 7 scenario look like? If you don't have any assets, or if all your assets are exempt, like an individual exemption would be a homestead, or if they're underwater, like you own a vehicle that you owe $100,000 on and it's only worth $70,000, you really have the leverage against the creditors, because unless they work with you, they're not going to receive any of their money back. So when you're doing debt negotiation, you really got to know what your worst case scenario is, whether it's for business or personal. And if it is a Chapter 7 situation, okay, what could I lose? If you're collection proof, as I call it, then you really have the leverage on the creditor, because the only way that they're going to get paid is if you voluntarily make payments from your wages or from your exempt property. So that's the answer to that. Can you keep cash in personal Chapter 7? You actually can. There are certain exemptions. The exemptions go state by state, so you'd want to run that by a bankruptcy attorney that's near you. Got another question here. What if I have no employees but own Airbnbs and can't make my mortgage payments? So unfortunately, the PPP is not going to be best for you, because that's obviously based on the employees. What I would do if I were you is I would contact the mortgage companies, and they're giving 6 months worth of forbearance. Make sure you keep track of everything that they say as well, because they're not saying what happens at the end of that 6 months. And what happened the last time they did this is they just required all 6 months payment due at that point, which really didn't help you, because if you would have been able to make the payments every month, you would have had the money, and you wouldn't need the 6 month forbearance. So reach out to your mortgage company. Also apply for that economic injury disaster loan, and that might be able to help you out there as well. All right, let me see if there's any other questions that came in here. All right, and I believe that's all the questions. I got everybody answered. If you have any other questions, feel free again to email me at chat@cvhlawgroup.com. Like to thank everybody that set this up and attended. I hope it was helpful information. Stay strong, survive. If there's anything I can do to help you, I'd be happy to speak with you for free, just to give you some advice. And I also encourage you to come to the next week's webinar, which will feature another NSU alum who plays a critical part in these trying times. Dr. Randy Katz is a graduate of the medical school at NSU, and he serves as the chairman of emergency medicine at Memorial Healthcare Systems, and is the medical director for the city of Hollywood, who I saw was very hardly hit by the COVID. So tune in next Thursday at 2 p.m. to hear updates from him about when life returns back to normal for us, which hopefully is sooner than later. So thank you guys. Thank you so much. And I think that's it.